All right, folks, it's time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase, not to be confused with other Cut to the Chase podcasts. This is the one that you want to listen to because I have brought Ellen Bardash, litigation reporter from law.com, to discuss the Boy Scout litigation and the settlement. How are you doing today, Ellen?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. That's my favorite thing now. Thank you for asking. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for asking. God bless you. Thank you for asking. But in any event, Ellen covers the Delaware courts. So the Delaware courts, I guess, get a lot of the corporate kind of stuff, including the Elon Musk Twitter trial that's coming up. And maybe we'll be able to get Ellen back to discuss that fascinating topic.
Yeah,
what's that?
Anytime.
Anytime. All right. Wow. That's what I want to hear. All right. So Ellen, let's start. Let's give a little background. What is this Boy Scout litigation all about? And then we'll dig deeper into where we're at with that now.
Okay. So the Chapter 11 bankruptcy was filed by the Boy Scouts of America in February 2020. And leading up to that, they had been defending against all of these sexual abuse suits, which they were, I guess, settling individually and litigating individually. The bankruptcy was a way to pool all of those together and basically try to find some kind of universal resolution while also figuring out how they were going to emerge from bankruptcy. So this has been going on for about 2.5 years now. And we just, on the 9th, I believe, got the final plan approved. So that stage of this is finally all settled, and we're moving into the stage where survivors will be getting their compensation.
All right. So leading up to this, I mean, what was going on with the Boy Scouts? Why were they suing? Just in general, what was the main issue?
So there were all these allegations that mostly from the 60s, 70s, 80s, not as much anything recent, but there were just sexual abuse issues all through scouting and on a lot of different, not in the same area, not like one person, it was a widespread thing. And so again, this was just kind of a way to centralize all of that and make sure all of these claims could get addressed without taking years and years to litigate each one individually.
All right. So approximately how many Boy Scouts are involved in this litigation?
There are over 82,000 claims. I believe most of those are all individual, so about 82,000 people. I'm not entirely sure, but there might be some people that have multiple claims within that.
All right. And so, most lawyers or people that know law think, oh, you only have 4 years, 5 years, 2 years to file a claim. We're talking about claims that go back to the 1960s. So
right.
how did these Boy Scouts, I guess, get around the 4-year statute of limitations?
Right. So that was actually part of the settlement and the whole plan that eventually got established. They were referring to them as open states and closed states, where in some states the statute of limitations hadn't passed and some it had. And the attorneys for the survivors that I've spoken to, it was really important to them that all of these survivors be eligible for the same compensation and not just barred from this because they were in a closed state. So that made it more of a federal issue and an issue within the bankruptcy case itself rather than a state case.
All right. So, normally when I think of a settlement, that's approved by the court, I think the terms are identified. There's nothing left to do except, send money, I sign a document, that's the end of the ball game. Thank you very much. But that's not going to happen here. What was the proposal? Like, give us the basics of the proposal and how this is going to play out.
Sure. So we've had quite a few iterations of this plan over the last, was probably 1.5 years ago that we kind of got the first real substantive stuff of what is in this. And this one that was approved about 2 weeks ago, I think, this is the final version. So everything with the plan is said and done. And what that means, on the large scale, it's a bankruptcy, so there's a million moving parts. But on a large scale, the settlement trust, the Boy Scouts themselves and two of their largest insurers have all agreed to put their settlement funding into that trust. And so what we're doing now is seeing how there's going to be a committee that distributes those funds basically at this point. So the plan itself is 100% finalized. It's just the actual administration of the trust that's going to be taking place next.
All right, so going back to, normal case, I'm the client, my attorney calls me up and they're offering you $5,000. Do you want to take it? Yes, no, whatever. Okay, that's the end of the story. How did this settlement come to be? I mean, if the individual Boy Scouts don't even know what they're going to get paid, let's explain how a settlement goes in this kind of bankruptcy proceeding.
Sure. So with these tens of thousands of survivors, there are a few major groups that represented them. So they have their own attorneys, or, one law firm will have a couple thousand. But then on top of that, there's it was called the Coalition of Abused Scouts for Justice, was this unified set of attorneys who are representing survivors who are kind of pushing all for the same thing. And then there's also a tort claimants committee that was, I guess, sort of a comparable thing. And then there's also, of course, the Boy Scouts attorneys who are working from their end on this. So the settlements themselves, those were reached with all of those parties. There was a little bit of the survivors' attorneys at some points saying, this proposed settlement is not enough. We're not going to approve that. But these ones that were ultimately approved were, it was a combination of the efforts from all of those parties, basically.
All right. So from what I understood, the Boy Scouts themselves were asked to approve the basic plan. And if a certain percentage of them said yes, then that basically would be enough for the judge to approve it. Something to that, right? And so
Right.
what percentage of the Boy Scouts actually approved it?
So in the end, I believe it ended up being about 85%. And the way that worked was you have to have at least 75% for the judge to consider approving it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's approved. And that's where we went to that hearing. That was her considering that with the approval threshold met.
All right, so you cut out a little bit there, but I think you referenced a hearing. So there was the Boy Scouts were presented with the settlement. They said yes or no. 86% said yes. And then the judge, that was enough for the judge to have a hearing. And
Right.
what took place at the hearing? What was the basic purpose of the hearing? Was it to prove whether the sexual allegations, sexual abuse allegations were true, or what was the gist of the hearing?
So that part with determining if the allegations are true, that's actually what's going to be happening now with the trust distribution. They're going to go through every claim one by one and sort of figure out the merits of those. What the hearing was basically a chance for all of the parties that were in favor of the plan. So the Boy Scouts, most of the claimants and survivors, several other groups, and the insurers who had agreed to settlement amounts. It was basically a chance for all of them to present all the evidence they had to the judge of why this should go forward. And then also the opposing parties got to do the same and make their case for why they thought it should not be approved as it was at that time. And then it was also just a chance for the judge to ask any questions she had.
All right. And so from my sources basically told me that a lot of the questions were, revolving around the administration of these claims.
Right.
And how, I mean, you're talking 82,000 claims that now have to be evaluated to determine whether they're legitimate and what the severity of these claims are, and in the context of how to divvy up the pile of money that's in the bankruptcy trustee's possession, right? Is that-
Right.
All right, so let's start off, what amount of money is there that's in this trust to be divvied up?
There's currently about 2.4 billion that's been decided on, and that's from the Boy Scouts themselves, and also two of the largest insurers. And that could go up as the trust is being, handed out to the survivors. It's going to depend on what other insurance companies, if they end up settling, any other relevant parties might end up settling. And that's kind of the expectation, is the insurers also won't want to litigate all of these cases individually, and will be kind of amenable to settlements.
Now, the headline that I saw when the judge has the hearing, the judge says, okay, I'm approving the settlement plan.
Mhm.
The headline that I read was that the judge has approved 90% of the plan. Has the last 10% been approved also? I don't understand what that last 10% involves.
Sure. So after the hearing that was in March and April, the judge was considering everything that was presented there. And then in July, she came out with her findings and conclusions. And that was where it was about 90% approved. The big thing with that she didn't approve from the plan was a settlement with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She had an issue with the releases, basically saying it would release them from more claims than it should, from things outside of scouting. So that's no longer a part of the plan. And there were a few other things. Those are mostly, just bankruptcy technicality type things, crossing T's, dotting I's, stuff like that. So then there was a hearing beginning of September where everyone kind of presented their last few issues with, from that 10% and what wasn't worked out, what still needed to be resolved. And then all the parties went back and changed what the judge said needed to be changed. And now it is 100% ready to go and finalized.
All right, so I want to talk about the claims administration process, which essentially involves, going through one by one. Each one of these Boy Scouts are going to have to be processed according to the claims administration process. Has that been set up? Are they still working on that?
The actual setup for that is part of the plan. So they have the mechanics of how all that's going to work. To my knowledge, it's just now in the stages of kind of getting started and figuring out, step by step what their procedure is going to be. But the actual format of that is set up. So there's one trustee that is Barbara Hauser, who's a retired bankruptcy judge. And then there's also a committee of, I believe it's all the survivors' attorneys, who are going to be working on figuring out who gets what compensation.
All right, so I'm assuming that there's going to be certain, it's not like, all right, 2.4 billion divided by 80,000 equals whatever. It's not going to be everybody's getting the same amount. I'm assuming that there are going to be certain factors that the administrators are going to look to determine who gets more and who gets less.
Right. So they actually set out in the plan a matrix of how much each person can get for each type of claim. So they're categorized basically by the severity of abuse, where the more severe offenses, the victims of those, or the survivors of those, are going to get more compensation. And so it ranges from about $3,500 is the lowest, and it could go up all the way to 2.7 million per person. So yeah, it's not just divided 82,000 ways. And I think it's important to note there, if there is more money added from more insurance settlements or things like that, the people who get their compensation before those are decided, they're not going to get additional money. This money, or these dollar amounts that are in the matrix, those are the final amounts that they're going to get.
All right, and so what about Boy Scouts who didn't even know about this and were sexually abused? Is it too late for them to jump into the case?
It is now. There was a claims deadline a while back before this first version of the plan was submitted at the beginning of the year. But they did have to run, the Boy Scouts of America did, a pretty large campaign of informing people, if you have a claim like this, you should contact these people. So it was pretty widely publicized from the beginning.
All right, so that deadline has come and gone.
Right.
All right. I think that pretty much covers what I wanted. A lot of this is kind of designed to help me get some answers or whatever. And I did through you, Ellen, and I appreciate that. Is there anything else you think we need to add to this discussion? I'm looking through my little cheat sheet notes here. And it looks like I think I covered pretty much everything I wanted to touch base on.
Okay, I just had one other thing I think is kind of important to consider with this. It's not a liquidation bankruptcy, so the Boy Scouts will continue to exist as an organization after this. And part of the agreement within this plan is having new protocols, new safeguards in place to prevent things like this from happening again. So we talk a lot about the monetary side, because obviously 2.4 billion is a huge number. But just, I think it's important to note that there's those non-monetary parts of it as well.
All right. And my last question, I swear to God, what about the girl? Like, is this problem systemic with the Girl Scouts also? Or, I mean, it's kind of a little surprised that it's only a Boy Scout issue.
Right. So this case was only for the Boy Scouts. If there is anything within the Girl Scouts, I mean, I would hope there's not, but we don't know about it. That would be a separate case, separate bankruptcy if anything were to happen like that.
All right. I think that does it then. I thank you a lot, Ellen, and I'm going to bring you back soon because I know that the Twitter trial, Musk tried to get it delayed and the judge said no.
Yeah.
So we got to, I want to get you back here before that trial goes on so you can let everybody know that's an exciting one too. All right, Ellen Ellen Bardash from law.com and litigation reporter covering the Delaware stories. I thank you for coming on, Ellen, and have a good day.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
All right, that'll do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase. If you have any questions that you want me to ask Ellen before she comes back, I would say maybe another week or two on this Twitter trial with Elon Musk, our favorite musketeer, send me through the usual channels. And that'll do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase. If I haven't already said that, everybody be safe.